Towards the back of your autobiography, there is an appendix listing all the films in your long and
I know, it's the most
distinguished
frightening thing I've ever read.
your long and distinguished career. The listing for 1954 reveals that you made 5 pictures in 1 year, incredibly.
I must have been mad.
And
Yeah.
Quatermass Experiment was the 5th picture you made that year. Didn't you feel like you needed a holiday?
Well, I think before Quatermass even came up, I had gone, Yolande and I had gone on holiday. We were going booked a holiday in Tangier. And it was, Tony Hines took me to lunch one day.
This was the producer of the film.
The producer of the film, Anthony Hines, yes. And talked about this TV series that had been riveting Britain all this time, and they'd bought the film rights of it. And would I read them and see if we could adapt this, get this into a screenplay, and if I'd like to do it. And in those days, the planes left from Northolt Airport, and we were at Northolt, Joe and I, about to get on our plane, and Tony Hines arrived with a carrier bag full of 6 Quatermass TV scripts, which is all you need when you're going on a passenger plane.
Yeah.
There's a great big hammer. Anyway, to take it away and read them in Tangier. And I took them away and I put them at the side of my bed. And we'd been there about a week, and Yolande said to me, "Aren't you going to read those?" And I said, "Oh, God, yes." I said, "Well, you know, I'm not a science fiction fan." So, and I was the only person in Britain, I'm sure, who'd never seen the series.
Really?
And it was a series that riveted everybody, and nobody went out the night that was shown.
Absolutely.
But I hadn't been a science fiction fan at all. So I'd put off reading it. And I said, "Well, you know, I'm not a science fiction fan." And Yolande said to me, "Since when have you been ethereal?" And I thought, "Oh, well, after a crack like that, I must read it." And I took it down on the beach, and I was riveted by this thing. And I called Tony Hines from Tangier and said, "Look, if you still want me, I'd love to do it." So that's how that came out.
Well, the film you made, The Quatermass Experiment, is now amongst one of the best-known movies in your career.
It shows how lucky you can become.
But it's very different from the comedies that you were known for before.
Well, yes, which is wonderful, because I had made so many comedies. Most of my career had been making comedies. And whenever I tried to do anything else, people would say, no, why don't you do what you know, do. And it's often, once you get in a rut, like being known as a comedy writer, director, it's awfully tough to get out of it. And I was desperately trying to get out of it, and this was a wonderful chance to get out of my series of comedies that I'd made.
It was a risky venture in a way, though, wasn't it? Because Hammer were deliberately aiming for an X certificate with this film, and it was the first time a British director had been asked to make a picture of this sort since the war, really. I mean, did you consider making a horror film to be a commercial risk at that time?
No, I didn't, because I didn't see it as a horror film at all. And I'm always rather surprised when people list it as one of the horror films, because to me it was a science fiction film. And I thought it was a brilliantly written series, and it was a great story, and an unusual one. And I saw it in this light, except that I felt that instead of trying to do it as a science fiction film, that I would like to do it as a science fact film, so that people believed it, rather than saying, "Oh, well, isn't that a spooky film," you know? And so I got Tony Hines to let me shoot it almost as though I was shooting a special program for the BBC or something.
For Panorama.
I'd been told to go out, yes, Panorama or something. I'd been told to go out and cover this story as it happened. So I tried to do it sort of cinema verite and using handheld cameras every now and then, which was, I must say, they were all a little horrified that in the film studio we were using handheld cameras when we had tripods.
Yeah.
But I thought it gave it a bit more emergency, and that people would somehow enter into it a little more, because they were so used to seeing, in those days, newsreels was part of our lives. You couldn't wait to see the newsreel, the Pathé newsreels, the Gaumont newsreels. And to shoot this almost as though it was a newsreel coverage, I thought might give it an air of science fact instead of science fiction.
This was very different from the approach that Rudolph Cartier had adopted for the BBC, of course. And, of course, something else that was very different was the running time. This was less than half the running time of the
Well,
TV
yes,
version.
this was, what, an hour and a half, hour and 20 minutes, whatever it was. And this is the one difficulty of when you're given 6 television scripts, which run in all about 3 hours, and you have to make an hour and 20-minute movie out of it. You have to do quite a bit of compressing, and you have to really just get the gist of everything without losing your character's character. And I think Nigel Neal, or Tom's, we knew him, Tom Neal was a little unhappy with the fact that I had to cut it down for a script and really compress it.
Perhaps the biggest difference, though, quite aside from things like running time and directing style, is the fact that the central figure of Quatermass is so different in this movie compared to the character that Reginald Tate had played on television.
Well, yes, because in the TV series, although I didn't see it, I was told it was an English professor a very English professor, or a professor-like character. And when I heard from America that we were going to get Brian Donlevy to play it, I was tickled pink because it would give my newsreel more reality than an English professor, somehow or other. Of course, Tom Neal was horrified, I'm afraid, on that. But it really was, and so it was much easier for me scripting for a real person to do when I'm doing that kind of a film, which, in the way I wanted to.
You very much tailored it towards his tough guy screen persona.
A little bit more, yes. Still using what Nigel Neal wrote, but having to, yes, tailor it to and slightly recreate that character.
And of course you had no idea that you would be starting Hammer on a series of horror films that would last 20 years.
No. It's very funny because I said to our producer, Tony Hines, I said, if I had known then that this film was going to become a cult movie, I'd have asked for more money. And he looked me straight back and said, you wouldn't have got it.
Val Guest, thank you very much.